Hi, and welcome to Across the Desk. This week, we're going to feature Representative Jim Olsen, and he has been a feature of this show in the past and previous seasons, where last year he put in a bill against the marijuana industry, and we covered that. It didn't go anywhere, but there's been a little drama down at the legislature this week, and he's got a couple of really wacky bills, and so he's the subject of this week's show. So a little drama happened down at the legislature this week with Representative Jim Olsen defending an anti-abortion bill that pretty much illegalizes all abortion in the state of Oklahoma, and talking about how this bill is way more important than any slavery bill that ever came up before it. And he argued this point against an African American representative, A.J. Pittman, and he said, yes, of course it is, because you're killing a baby and at least a slave is alive. And he defended that position, and it was kind of gross. He really didn't even understand it, because then he came back and doubled down on it again. So this guy's not going to back off of any mistakes he makes, whether it's of one type or the other. It was very insulting, and it kind of made the news. So that's one of the things you get with Jim Olsen, and it's kind of why he put him on the radar this week for me. And then I started looking up some of the things. Of course, last year I covered him when he put in that bill, like I said in the beginning here, against the marijuana industry, but he goes further than that. The thing about Representative Jim Olsen you need to understand is, one, he is a big government conservative. Because believe me, when we talk about conservative values and we talk about social conservatism is big government policy. Don't fool yourself and think it isn't, because that's exactly what it is. He's going to use the force of government to do harm to those who he disagrees with or disagree with him. He wants to use the force of government to make their lives harder, and that's kind of what he's doing. And he's also doing this in a way to further support his own religious views. See, and that's what mostly this is about. It's about his religious views. He's a very, very devout Christian, and he thinks you ought to be too. And by golly, he's going to use the force of government to make sure you live by his Christian morals and ideals. And so that's what we got here with Jim Olsen, a big government conservative who's in our legislature trying to pass big government laws on morality on the people of the state. And it's not just goes into just things like abortion. He's also the guy that authored the bill on the transgender and mental health issue guide. He's that guy too, who wants to harm youth that are transgender or gay, and to have their parents have all kinds of full kinds of rights and force them into psychology treatments that can actually even cause harm. It even says that in one of the bills. Hey, this right here means the treatment we want to use can cause physical harm to the patient. So that's one of the things. If we want to use that to try to change their sexual behaviors, then he thinks they should be allowed to do so, all in the name of his religion, of course, because that's what it all comes down to. That's where all this moral beginning come. That's where all of his force of law is. He thinks we should be controlled by biblical law. He thinks we should take things out of the Bible and force them into law and force people to live by those, even if you're not a Christian, and he justifies this. And that's what we get with Jim Olsen. And you see this in bill after bill that he puts in, like the anti-transgender and gay bill I just talked about. Perfect example. Of course, one, it never got out of committee because they thought that was crazy too. But there are some others that have been out of committee, like House Bill 1056. You can really see it in this one, just how much religion means to Mr. Jim Olsen and how much he thinks it should mean to you. Because in it, this House Bill 1056, it's an amendatory bill, and what it has to do is with our rioting laws we have. But it's kind of not what you think. What he wants to add to it is that during a riot or emergency, you can't shut down a church. Because right now, the governor, if there's a riot, the governor, the municipality, county, whatever, they can decide to shut areas down, shut down businesses in an area or whatever to contain a riot. Well, in this bill, you can do that, but you can't shut down a church. Can't do it. And that's what the whole thing's about. And it's kind of mind-boggling to me that this guy thinks that this is the pressing issues of the day in Oklahoma in his district. He thinks that this is the most important stuff you got to do. People in his district, man, people in my district, they really care about keeping those churches open during tornadoes and floods and riots. Because I'm sure in the rural community of District 2 where he is, yeah, lots of riots happen out there. So this is one of those things, right? And it probably doesn't, honestly, to think of it, it probably doesn't have to do with anything people in his district. It's just a guy, big government conservative, Jim Olsen, who wants to put the force of government on other people outside his district because they didn't have any riots in his district. It wasn't in his district. It was other people's districts. So he's thinking about using the force of government on them. And that's pretty much what this is about. All right, that's what it's all about. That's pretty much what House Bill 1056 is all about. Now, he has other bills. One bill that's not getting anywhere, and we're probably thankful it doesn't, is House Bill 1004? 1004. Yeah, it's House Bill 1004. That's the one. And this one is an anti-gay, lesbian, transgender bill is what it is. And basically it's an act relating to counseling, creating the Parental and Family Rights and Counseling Protection Act. So basically, if you're gay and you have homosexual dysphoria, well, we can cure that. And your family has a right to make sure you get that treatment because being a sexual deviant is derogatory and you shouldn't be it. It goes against everything Jesus-y to this guy. So you shouldn't do it. And we should be able to have the force of conservative government come in and force you with your family to get this treatment. And one of the funny things about it, well, I don't know how funny it is. It's not really funny. But one of the things I found in this thing that kind of shocking, I guess, was that he wanted to find a certain type of therapy. This certain type of therapy includes physical harm. And it's a type of therapy, yeah, we want to physically harm you, shock therapy and stuff like that, to make sure you're not going to be a sexual deviant anymore. This is classic conservatism 101. We want to use the force of big government to harm those we disagree with. The ones that disagree with us. The ones that stand in our way. The ones that are sexual and deviants. Yeah, they go against my religion. I want to use government to harm those people. It's a GOP plank. You can go right to the Oklahoma Republican Party platform and you can see where they talk about using the force of government to harm those that disagree with them. You see it in there. And so they're okay with that. They're totally fine with that form of big government policy. And that's what you get especially with social conservatism. Because like I say, social conservatism is big government policy. There's something else I'd like to point out about Representative Jim Olsen. And that's the fact that the last election cycle, he won his re-election. And how he won his re-election was nobody ran against him. Because in the last election cycle, the Democratic Party here in Oklahoma, they didn't recruit. So we had 50 plus legislative seats that just went unchallenged because we didn't have any Democrat run against them. So you people like Jim Olsen who benefit from that and walk right into a seat. And this allows him to put out crazy legislation. And because who's going to challenge him? No one was there to challenge him last time. There's no one to challenge him this time. And there's probably a good bet that no one may be there to challenge him next time. So what's to stop him from putting in just some of the craziest and outlandish legislation we can think of when it comes to big government conservatism? And what I mean by that is social conservatism is big government. It really is. And social conservative policy is big government policy. And you can see it with Jim Olsen and the bills he does. Like, he's got this anti-transgender bill. And you can see it in there. Now it's kind of dolled up to look like, oh, this is a religious freedom bill. This gives the family religious freedom from the government, so they don't have to come in, and the government can't help who it is, the guy that he doesn't like anyway. So that gay, transgender, lesbian person, whether it be a kid or whatever, young adult, their family in this bill can decide, hey man, we want you to get therapy, we're doing an intervention, and if we want to shock therapy your butt, we're going to do it. So that's what this bill's about. And it's not really a freedom type bill. It's not really a small government type bill. It's not. It's really a big government type bill, because here we're going to use the force of big government to come in and protect the people who are related to the gay, transgender, or lesbian person. So it's a bill against the transgender people. No, it's a bill for the family of those people. That's how he wants to put it. It's for their freedom, to keep the government away from them. But that's not what it does. What it does is it sicks the government on the transgender gay person, because they're deviants. And he puts it in his law. His aversion therapy. Aversion therapy. That's, where we can, beat the crap out of you to get you to change your sexual behavior. It's gross. It's so barbaric. And that's just what we get with Representative Jim Olsen. And it'd be nice to have someone run against him. If somebody did run against him, man, with bills like this, I don't see how you could have a hard time running against him. I mean, I get it. It's Oklahoma. We have people out there in rural America. They just won't educate themselves. They won't learn about any issues or the candidates themselves. They just care if he has an R or a D after their name. And there's a lot of people in Oklahoma like that. I get it. I get it. Representative Jim Olsen could win just because of that. Yeah, we know he sucks. We know he does all this big government stuff. He's better than a liberal. Then that's what they'll say, without even knowing who the Democrat is that's running against him. Not or anything. Not even know who they are, or their policy issues, or anything. Or even know how far left or right they may be. Just that D after their name, can't vote for them. And that's Republican conservative mentality. That's their mentality. It's and it's funny how ironic or just plain hypocritical or just plain projection it is when they say they're a bunch of sheep. When it's the conservatives that always have the talking points that go out to all their media so they can all talk about the same thing and create an echo chamber. Hey, you know what? That's in Karl Rove's book, by the way, about Republicans being sheep and spouting off the same talking points, because that's what that's all about. And that's what they do. They all get together, they all congeal, and that's what they do. They unify. And they unify no matter what. And that's what you see. So they're going to all unify like sheep. And they'll vote for Representative Jim Olsen, if nothing else, because he's a Republican. If nothing else, because they fear voting for a Democrat, even if Jim Olsen was the one eating babies and fleecing all our tax dollars. Is he fleecing all our tax dollars? I don't know, man. But you know what? That bill he put out last year, trying to keep a medical dispensary or anything related to the medical marijuana industry within 1,000 feet of a church property, whether it was borrowed, leased, or owned, borrowed, leased, or owned. If I just decide, hey Jim, I want you to borrow my church, property for your church, then all of a sudden, oh hey man, he's borrowing my property, put his trailer on it, you can't put a dispensary there. That's how that works. And that's exactly what he was thinking. It wasn't a law where he's like, hey man, we're going to have these standards. It wasn't that at all. This is to keep the medical marijuana industry in Oklahoma out of Oklahoma. That's what it's about. It's about killing it. It's about putting a monkey in the wrench and screwing up the works. That's what it's about for Jim Olsen. Because, see, he disagrees with it. And if he disagrees with it, he's going to use the force of big government to make sure it doesn't exist, or I'm going to harm it in some way. And that's exactly what that was. Exactly what that was. Big government conservatism. You just saw it right there. And you see it all over the place with Representative Jim Olsen. Because he is a big government conservative. and his policies, his legislation, his stances, and even his debates on how less harmful slavery is big government conservatism. That's what it is. Well, I hope you've enjoyed Across the Desk this week. I'm Kit Fairchild. I'll see you next week.